My House of Horrors Chapter 471 to 480. After taking the trash out of the third sick hall, Chen Ge went to the bathroom to wash his face and returned to work. At 6:30 p.m., the haunted house stopped accepting visitors. Chen Ge had Shu Wan and Xiao Jiyu clean up while he went to find Shu Shu to get the park's van keys. He planned to bring the mannequins back that night. After that, he went underground to find Dr. Chen. The two exchanged contact information, and then Chen Ge used the black cloth to cover Dr. Chen's eyes. He led him out of the haunted house and called a taxi to the edge of western Zhejiang. The journey did not take up much time. When it was almost 7 p.m., Chen Ge returned to New Century Park. Shu Wan and Ji Yu Feiyu had already cleaned the entrance. Thank you for your hard work, leave the rest to me. Chen Ge accepted the broom and took out his phone to call Qian Guigan. Boss Qian, prepare the materials on your side. I might need to stay at the workshop for the whole night to finish the first batch of mannequins. Okay, I'll wait for you at the workshop. Boss Qian was quick to agree. When his shop was about to close, Chen Ge's appearance gave him hope. After hanging up, Chen Ge turned around and realized that Shu Wan and Xiao Jiyu had not left. Is there anything else? You're the boss, but I feel like you're more tired than your employees. You either stay up late or pull all-nighters. Shu Wan looked cute without the makeup, but compared to when she first joined the haunted house, she had matured quite a bit. Brother Chen, is there anything we can help you with? Xiao Jiyu also walked over. After all, I have nothing to do at home this early. Chen Ge was quite touched when his employees volunteered to work overtime. He thought about it, and moving 20 mannequins was indeed a big problem, so he did not reject them. Okay, come with me. We'll try to finish this before midnight. After closing the haunted house door, Chen Ge drove the park's van and brought Shu Wan and Ji Yu Feiyu to the workshop. Chen Ge had already finished part of the model that morning. He gave Ji Yu Feiyu and Shu Wan a simple explanation of what to do next. He then handed over the less technical tasks such as filling and moving to the two of them. At 11 p.m., the first batch of 20 mannequins was ready. This batch of models was made of the best materials, and they were the same scale as real people. However, in order to save time, Chen Ge did not put makeup or clothes on the models. They worked together to move the mannequins into the van and return to the haunted house. I'll take care of the rest of the process myself. You guys should hurry home. Chen Ge glanced at the time. After midnight, the haunted house would have its third expansion, and the haunted house would officially be upgraded to the Maze of Terror. He was afraid that he would cause a commotion that would arouse the suspicion of Shu Wan and Xiao Jiyu. Boss, how long are you going to take to move all these mannequins by yourself? Xiao Jiyu looked at the mannequins that littered the haunted house corridor. It was quite scary at night. I'll have to put makeup on them one by one so that they'll be ready for use tomorrow. Chen Ge thanked him and closed the door. How long are you going to take? Ji Yu Feiyu wanted to say something, but Chen Ge had already started. You're working too hard. No one in this world can achieve success easily. Stop lamenting. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Shu Wan waved and left. Only Ji Yu Feiyu was left at the park. Compared to the hustle and bustle of the day, the park at night was empty and creepy. The image of the mannequins stacked on top of each other flashed across his mind, and he shivered. Boss is the boss. If it was me, I probably wouldn't have been able to stay here for one night. Xiao Jiyu walked out of New Century Park. It was 11:30 p.m., and the public bus had stopped running. His rented place was in the countryside, and it was quite far from New Century Park. Should I call a taxi? Ji Yu Feiyu touched his pocket, and his heart ached. He had been working in the city for several months, and he had only gotten his salary from Chen Ge once. The rent and the hospital had cost him quite a bit. Normally, he could not even afford to order takeout, so he had been cooking for himself. Since there's nothing to do, I'll walk home as far as I can. At least I'll call a taxi when I'm tired. At least that'll save me some money. Ji Yu Feiyu put on his earphones and walked toward the countryside. The night breeze drifted into his sleeves, and it was cold. There were few pedestrians, and the streetlights dimmed. He walked for about 40 minutes, and at around midnight, Ji Yu Feiyu suddenly heard someone ask him where he was going. Should I get into the car? He removed the earphones and looked around. There was no one around him. Weird. Could it be that the voice came from the earphones? He put on the earphones and listened to the song again, but there was no one else. What's going on? Gu Feiyu could not figure it out. The streetlights on the side of the road seemed to dim, and there was no one around him. He continued to walk forward alone. The buildings became shorter and more desolate. This was the road that he usually took home, but it gave him a different feeling. After walking for another 10 minutes, Gu Feiyu came to a junction. On one side was the road that he was familiar with, but the road on the other side was unfamiliar, like he had not seen that road before. Where are you going? When he heard that voice again, Gu Feiyu took off his headphones. When he looked to his side, he realized that a bus had driven over from behind him. The bus looked old, and the headlights were not on. There were a few passengers sitting inside, and most of them had their heads lowered like they were playing on their phones. It's almost 1 a.m., why is there still a bus? Gu Feiyu felt strangely anxious. He retreated to the side of the road, but he only took a few steps when his phone vibrated. Clicking it open, Gu Feiyu realized that Chen Ge had sent him a red packet, and there was a voice message attached. Xiao Ji, thank you for your hard work. This is your overtime pay. Chen Ge's voice was exceptionally warm in the cold night. Xiao Ji accepted the red packet and prepared to tell Chen Ge about the strange thing that had happened to him. However, before he could call Chen Ge, he turned back to look and realized that the bus had already left. The bus entered the road that he was unfamiliar with. Standing at the junction, Gu Feiyu watched as the bus left. The streetlights returned to normal, and his body did not feel so cold anymore. This is weird. Gu Feiyu did not dare to wander around on his own anymore. He waited for a long time before he flagged down a taxi. Where are you going? The apartment building next to Minghua Manor. Gu Feiyu was still thinking about the bus, so he asked the driver with uncertainty, Boss, when you drove over, did you see a bus pass by? No, I didn't. The driver glanced at Gu Feiyu through the rearview mirror, and he grumbled, What's wrong with you young people recently? A few days ago, I picked up a tourist from eastern Zhejiang, and he was just like you. He asked me if I saw a moving company's truck pass by. The road is only so wide, so can't you see for yourselves whether there's a car passing by or not? Quote. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. You didn't see it. Xiao Ji turned back to look at the road. The buildings on the sides felt different from before. This is weird. The bus was still here earlier. In the haunted house's dressing room, after seeing Xiao Ji and Xu Wan receive their red packets, Chen Ge tossed his phone to the side and focused on the makeup. He used mortician's makeup and the living dolls to recreate the real appearance of the dead bodies. Their eyes bulged out, and they were filled with hatred and jealousy toward the living. I can hollow out the faces for these few and make them removable. When the visitors come, the faces will turn and fall off. Chen Ge tried his best. He worked alone in the dressing room until 2 a.m. before he finished the makeup for the 20 dolls. Even Chen Ge was tired from the continuous work. He set an alarm for himself and returned to the staff break room to sleep. Just as he lay down, Chen Ge felt like he had not slept for long when the phone in his pocket vibrated. He took it out in a daze and realized it was a message from the black phone. Third expansion completed. Haunted house upgraded to Maze of Terror. Maximum number of red specters increased. Maximum number of employees increased. Maze of Terror special effect. Decreased sense of direction. The other special effects will be unlocked after the fourth expansion. This will be a process of losing one's mind and soul. Specters favored. Congratulations for upgrading the haunted house into a Maze of Terror. You have randomly obtained a unique building, Howling Door. Howling Gate. When you are ready to scream, you can open this gate. Third expansion completed. 3-star scenario, underground morgue unlocked. You can control all the mechanisms inside through the phone. Quote. The few messages woke Chen Ge up instantly. The expansion is complete. He put on his jacket and ran out from the staff break room. When he was about to enter the underground morgue, he realized that the wooden board at the entrance to the Night of the Living Dead had disappeared. In its place was a pure black iron door that looked incredibly heavy and carved with various specters. This is the new reward, the Howling Gate. The solid iron door blocked the only entrance. Chen Ge walked to the door and touched the ghost on it. Screams and wails echoed in his mind. Grabbing the doorknob, Chen Ge pushed the door open and entered the underground scenario. After upgrading the labyrinth of terror, the underground felt even more sinister. Walking through it, I kept feeling like someone was calling my name from a certain direction, and I couldn't help but want to go in that direction. There should be other hidden effects. Once he entered the underground, Muyong High School was on his left, the third sick hall was on his right, and Coffin Village was right in front of him. The newly unlocked underground morgue was behind him. Chen Ge walked around and checked all the scare points with the help of the black phone. After confirming that there were no hidden threats, he returned to the surface and moved all the mannequins into the scenario. I can hide a few ghosts inside the mannequins. After the visitors get used to this, I'll come out to give them a surprise. By the way, where should I put these doctors? They're not good at scaring people, so I should give them a private room. I don't want them to wander around. Quote. Following his previous plan, Chen Ge finished setting up the morgue. When he came out, it was almost dawn. He took the time to take a nap. At 8:15 a.m., Chen Ge woke up punctually. After washing up, he opened the door. Another sunny day. Hopefully, the visitors will like the new scenario. He took out his phone and posted the information about the new scenario on the app that Director Luo had created for the haunted house. When the introduction of this new 3-star scenario appeared on the haunted house forum, it attracted the attention of all the online visitors. Many people were shocked by the development speed of Chen Ge's haunted house. They realized with despair that their speed of clearing the scenario was not as fast as Chen Ge's. Many of them left comments saying that they wanted to challenge the new scenario, and from this, some people realized that Chen Ge was indeed passionate about this job. It felt like the man had used his life to scare people. This thing designed by Director Luo is quite convenient to use. Chen Ge posted the few pictures that he had taken inside the scenario. He read the comments for a while before exiting silently. I expected the new scenario to attract a lot of attention. Today, it will probably attract more fans to experience it. At 8:20 a.m., Shu Wan walked from the entrance of the theme park. Chen Ge went to help her with her makeup, but when Shu Wan entered the scenario, Xiao Jiyu still did not show up. Is there a traffic jam? He called several times, but there was no answer. When it was almost 9 a.m., Chen Ge saw Xiao Jiyu rush into the theme park. Boss, I'm so sorry. Xiao Jiyu gasped for air, and his face was pale. Did something happen to you? Chen Ge looked at Jiyu Feiyu and felt weird. I came home too late yesterday, so I woke up late this morning. Xiao Jiyu apologized multiple times. Boss, I'll go do my makeup now. Go ahead, but be careful. There's no rush. Chen Ge looked at Xiao Jiyu, who ran into the haunted house, and felt like something was off. He kept a lookout for him. The theme park officially opened at 9 a.m., and the visitors swarmed in. Chen Ge could feel that the off-season was coming to an end, and the number of visitors was increasing. When the peak season arrives, it will be the time to clash with the futuristic theme park. As long as they don't take away too many customers, there's still a chance to turn things around. Chen Ge had seen the internal information of the futuristic theme park before, so he was familiar with their power. In just 5 minutes, a long queue had formed at the entrance of the haunted house. Some visitors had even lined up outside the entrance. Once the gate opened, they rushed toward the haunted house. Please don't push. Shu Shu and the workers rushed to maintain order. Chen Ge entered the resting hall and typed the introduction that he had written on his phone into the computer. It played on the screen. There are strange noises coming from the morgue. The cars that transport the dead bodies move back and forth in the corridors. The place is filled with the smell of formalin. The only way to escape this place is to move forward and choose between the red and white corridors. There is a group of immortals living inside the largest underground morgue. They opened their eyes in the formalin. This is the newest 3-star scenario at the haunted house, the underground morgue. The introduction on screen successfully attracted the curiosity of many visitors, but the visitors had learned their lesson. They would rather die than be the first to try. This is the first day of the underground morgue's opening. Following tradition, the ticket price for the new scenario will be halved. Everyone is welcome to come and visit. The new scenario had been unlocked, but no one was willing to visit it. This made Chen Ge feel like he was walking in the dark. From the interaction of the visitors on the app, it was clear that they were curious about the new scenario. However, those who could challenge a 3-star scenario had to have been through the torture of a 2-star scenario. They were all more cautious than the last, waiting for others to go in to scout and bring back first-hand information. Some of the visitors who were familiar with Chen Ge's haunted house had already found a spot in the resting hall, waiting to watch the show. This batch of visitors is too weak. They are too cowardly. They don't have that kind of courage. Chen Ge walked out of the resting hall with his phone and returned to the haunted house. After he walked away, the crowd outside became lively. The visitors whispered to each other, discussing the new scenario. Every scenario at Chen Ge's haunted house gave off a very realistic feeling. They had definitely been carefully polished. The 3-star scenarios were completely different, and this made the haunted house fans' hearts itch. They wanted to experience it, but they were also afraid that they might run into something too scary. Mr. Mew, Brother Wong was hospitalized because of this haunted house, and he still hasn't recovered. A young man in jeans at the back of the crowd whispered to the middle-aged man next to him, "It's only been a few days, and he's already opened a new scenario. I believe they've prepared everything beforehand and are just waiting for the peak season to come to fight for the market with us. The scenarios that are open now shouldn't be their trump card. The best thing will be saved for the last, but if New Century Park wants to compete with us with just one haunted house, they're still too far away. They've taken the wrong path, and they've misunderstood their own theme park. The age range of the visitors is too limited, and they're dancing on a tightrope." The middle-aged man was very perceptive. Then, are we just going to ignore them? Leave them to their own devices? The young man felt like the middle-aged man had a point. We can't ignore them. The middle-aged man looked at the line of visitors and the long line, and his voice lowered. One theme park is enough for Zhujiang. I only need to add New Century Park's specialty into my own theme park, and then there's no need for this theme park to exist anymore. Add their specialty into your own theme park. The young man nodded like he understood. That means our theme park will also develop a haunted house project. I remember when Brother Wong came, he seemed to have mentioned these things. Quote. Our technology is 5 years ahead of New Century Park. We have something they don't have, and we can replicate what they have with virtual technology to achieve the same effect. Therefore, they have no chance of winning. The middle-aged man had already come up with a follow-up plan. But before that, we need to solve a problem, and that is to understand why his haunted house is so attractive. Based on what I know, the haunted house at New Century Park has attracted an unprecedented amount of attention on the internet, and the positive reviews are incredibly high. This is something that no other haunted house has achieved before. Quote. I understand. Then, shall we go to the scenario that Brother Wong experienced earlier? The young man glanced at the big screen in the resting hall. I feel like his new scenario is quite interesting. The middle-aged man thought about it carefully. Xiao Li, you are the bravest person in our theme park. Today's mission is more important, so I will wait for you outside. Remember to send me anything important. Aren't you going in? The young man was stunned. Someone has to stay outside. Last time, I heard that Brother Wong had captured something very important, but unfortunately, it was deleted. This time, we can't let something like this happen again. Once you're done, send it to me immediately. I'll upload it to the company's high-level cloud disk. We won't give others a chance to intervene. Quote. Mr. Mu's words sounded very reasonable, but it made Xiao Li a little uncomfortable. Only when a person fainted from fright could the things in his phone be deleted without anyone noticing. Looking at Mr. Mu's arrangement, the park was already prepared for him to faint from fright. Then I'll start with a 1-star scenario. With the opening of the new scenario, there were many visitors who were interested, but they lacked a leader. Chen Ge observed the movement outside the haunted house. He wished he could find a few people to help him. At 11:00 in the afternoon, some of the tourists in the queue finally couldn't take it anymore. We've visited the third sick hall in Coffin Village. The requirement to clear the scenario is to find a specific item. It's too difficult to find a target in such a large scenario. I'll go ask the boss later to see what the requirement is. If it's not to find a specific item, I think we still have a chance of clearing the scenario. The person who spoke was Yang Cheng from Western Zhejiang Medical University. When he saw the introduction of the new scenario that Chen Ge had posted on the haunted house app that morning, he had been tempted, so he had skipped class with 2 other students to visit the new scenario. Are you sure you want to play the new scenario? Bro, have you become arrogant after visiting the 3-star scenario? Have you forgotten how the 3 of us were kicked out of the haunted house? The person who spoke was called Wang Yan, and he had a bad temper. We'll think about it. The last to speak was a quiet girl called Li Shui. The 3 of them had visited the haunted house before. At the time, it was the people from the Society of Strange Tales who had come to cause trouble. After Chen Ge dealt with the people from the Society of Strange Tales, he had purposely waived the tickets for the 3 and told them that there would be a discount next time they visited. We're here because there's a new scenario. Now that you're afraid, what's the point of us coming here? Yang Cheng looked at the queue that was about to reach them. How about this? We'll buy the tickets first. There's no hurry to enter the haunted house. When there are more visitors, we'll enter together. The more people there are, the less scary it will be. Quote. The 2 finally agreed. Under Shu Shu's sympathetic gaze, the 3 bought the tickets to the new scenario and entered the haunted house. Sign the disclaimer first. The pen and paper are on the table. Chen Ge lifted his head and realized that it was someone he knew. He immediately became friendly. Boss, we want to visit the new scenario this time. Hearing the term, new scenario, Chen Ge could not help but smile. The new scenario is half price. You've made the right choice today. Seeing Chen Ge's smile, Yang Cheng's hair stood on end. He quickly explained, we want to wait for more people before we go in together. No problem. Take a seat and rest. I'll go get you some water. It's fine, boss, we're not that thirsty. Yang Cheng wanted to say something but was interrupted by Chen Ge. Don't mention it, we're family. I feel a sense of closeness whenever I see you students from Western Zhejiang Medical University. Chen Ge handed the 3 bottles of water. Wait here, I'll go take a look outside. Chen Ge walked out of the haunted house with his phone and yelled at the visitors, are there any more visitors who want to experience the new scenario? Currently, there are 6 who have signed up. Since this is the first time it's open to the public, to give everyone a chance to get used to it, I'll gather 10 visitors to go in together. Quote. Chen Ge's sudden shout gave Shu Shu quite a fright. From Chen Ge's tone, he could hear that this unreliable boss was getting really excited. The new scenario is very scary, and it's only open to visitors who have challenged a 2-star scenario. Are there any brave visitors who want to challenge it? The time limit is half price. So far, 6 visitors have signed up. Quote. Holding the loudspeaker on the table, Chen Ge repeated himself. With his yin-yang vision, he could see that many of the visitors were interested. Allow me. When most of the visitors were hesitating, a young man in jeans walked out. His face was rather pale, and when he walked out of the line, he glanced at a certain spot in the crowd and exchanged a look with a middle-aged man. How should I address you, sir? Chen Ge looked at the young man, and the more he looked at him, the more he liked him. With someone taking the lead, many visitors started to waver. My surname is Li. The young man had just come out from the 1-star and 2-star scenarios. He really could not relate those scary scenarios to this kind and smiling boss. Okay, Mr. Li, please wait for a moment. Chen Ge raised the loudspeaker again. There are already 7 visitors who have signed up. Another 3, and the underground morgue will officially open to the public. This is a very meaningful day. All the participants' stories will be written into the Haunted Houses app. Quote. Hearing that, some of the visitors could not hold it in anymore. Boss, count the 3 of us in. 2 women and 1 man walked out from the back of the line. The 3 of them had a unique presence, and when they stood together, it was quite eye-catching. The man had pale skin and was so thin that he looked like a bag of bones. He looked gentle and shy, and he carried a large bag in his hands. It was filled with food and drinks. The woman on his left was wearing a pair of sports shoes. She had a sunny look, and her hair was tied up. When she walked, she had the air of an older sister. The woman on his right was the complete opposite of the woman on his left. She was more than 1.6 meters tall and had a cute baby face. She looked very young, like the clumsy neighbor's little sister who was cheerful and likable. The three did not look like siblings, and they did not look like a couple either. They walked to stand beside Chen Ge and introduced themselves. We are editors from Thriller magazine and loyal fans of your haunted house. We've visited all of your scenarios before. Chen Ge didn't remember who they were, but he still pretended to be enlightened. I seem to remember them. The design of your haunted house is very impressive. How did you come up with those strange and absurd images? We must communicate more when we have time. The man in the middle wanted to add Chen Ge's WeChat. Initially, Chen Ge rejected him, but when he saw that their office was in eastern Zhejiang, Chen Ge felt like he might really meet them in the future, so he added him as a friend. Okay, 10 people is just enough. How do I refer to the three of you? Chen Ge's attitude toward his visitors was impeccable. He always had a sincere smile on his face. My name is Anan, and this mature lady is our chief editor. Her name is Huya, and the girl next to her is Tails. Don't be fooled by her innocent appearance, all her cuteness is fake. The skinny man, who was carrying two big bags, ignored the supercilious looks from his two colleagues beside him and continued to speak. Huya, Tails. Are your names similar to the pen names of writers? Chen Ge glanced at the mature lady. She was wearing a tracksuit, and her presence radiated from within. Perhaps because she had been in charge of many authors, she naturally gave off the feeling that she was very powerful. However, when she smiled, she was very pretty. Huya really has Huya, but why is Tails called Tails? Chen Ge glanced at the girl and thought she was quite cute. The four of you, come with me. Wait a minute. Just as they turned around, someone in the crowd shouted, Boss, your Muyang High School scenario allows more than 10 people to enter at once. This is a 3-star scenario, can't you bring a few more people to visit with you? It was a man who spoke. He was 1.9 meters tall, and his sleeves were rolled up. The weather was not that hot, but he was sweating profusely. You want to come as well? No problem. Chen Ge liked this kind of visitor, direct, and ambitious. There are two of us. The tall man walked toward the haunted house, and behind him was a fat man with a bitter expression. How about 2 more people? It's fine even if there are 3 more. I'm telling you, don't worry so much. The most important thing is to have fun when visiting the haunted house. Quote. Mr. Chen is so generous. The man gave Chen Ge a thumbs up. He thought that Chen Ge was very generous. Other visitors have said that too. That's just who I am. Chen Ge waved his hand. Come with me. Pushing open the gate, the other visitors had just finished their visit and were rushing out. Chen Ge had the 6 visitors wait outside while he went in to get the disclaimer. Entering the room alone, he ran to the Spectre's changing room to grab a set of casual clothes and sneaked out. In the corridor's blind spot, he opened the comic and summoned Lao Zhou, Duan Yu, and Bai Cholan. Put this on first. Don't expose the red spot on your chest. Chen Ge was very thoughtful. After seeing Bai Cholan put on the jacket, he ran to where Yang Cheng's group was and took out the disclaimer from the cupboard. After handing them to Bai Chulan's group, Chen Ge had them go in first. Then he went to the door to hand the disclaimer to the other visitors. After they signed it, Chen Ge put the disclaimer away. Alright, we'll go meet up with the other visitors now. After putting away the disclaimer, Chen Ge led the 6 visitors into the haunted house. The temperature inside the haunted house was much lower than outside. Give me your disclaimer as well. Chen Ge pocketed the disclaimer from Yang Cheng and Lao Zhou. After making sure there were no mistakes, he led the 12 visitors to the entrance. This is the first time the underground morgue has been opened to the public, so there are still many things that need to be perfected. If you see anything weird and don't know whether it's a prop or not, you'd better turn and run. No, boss, what do you mean by that? There are props that aren't props at your haunted house. Yang Cheng knew how scary Chen Ge's haunted house was, so she did not miss any hint from Chen Ge. Of course, other than props, there are many surprises waiting for you in the new scenario. Chen Ge's words sped up. The requirement to clear the underground morgue is different from other scenarios. I've pasted 5 pictures of the victims on the walls of the underground morgue's central hub. There's no need for you to waste your time looking for them. I've already told you the locations of the objects, but remember, there are only 5 pictures, and only those who have the pictures can clear the scenario. There are only 5 pictures. Those who get the pictures have cleared the scenario, but what happens to those who don't? Yang Cheng sensed malice from the rules set by Chen Ge. It was to encourage competition among the visitors. Those who don't get the pictures just fail the scenario. Don't worry, I won't come up with any extra punishment. The more Chen Ge said that, the more afraid Yang Cheng became. This was not the first time he had interacted with Chen Ge. Due to his curiosity, he had once found the honorary criminal psychology lecturer at his school to discuss Chen Ge. The lecturer had only given Chen Ge 3 words: do not provoke him. With Chen Ge leading the way, the group reached the deepest part of the corridor. Enter from here and go down the stairs. The entrance to the scenario is behind you. Chen Ge looked at the 12 visitors behind him. I'll repeat one last time, safety first. When you run into something strange and you can't tell whether it's a prop or not, you'd better stay away from it. Grabbing the heavy wailing door with both hands, Chen Ge pushed it open. A shrill scream echoed in their minds, and a chilling aura rushed out. The temperature inside the haunted house dropped again. The visitors squeezed together, and Chen Ge stood at the entrance of the dark corridor with a smile on his face. The visitation time is 30 minutes. Have fun. After sending the visitors off, Chen Ge closed the heavy wailing door. The chains wrapped around the door, and he locked it from the outside. The visitors who can visit a 3-star scenario must have experienced the test of a 2-star scenario before. They should be able to endure the whole scenario. Chen Ge entered the dressing room to touch up his makeup. Then, he opened the door to the Spectre's changing room and picked out a suitable outfit for himself. The new scenario has just opened, so I can't overdo it. I'll turn on the background music and put in the phone spirit. The solid iron door slammed shut, and the sound of the chains slipping gave them goosebumps. The few visitors stopped on the stairs, feeling like they were trapped, and a sense of helplessness and despair rose in their hearts. Every time I come in, it feels like I've entered another world. Maybe it's a psychological effect. The male editor from the scariest magazine walked in front. My name is Anan. These 2 beauties are my colleagues. Hello, my name is Yang Cheng, and this is my classmate. The 3 of us are students from Western Zhejiang Medical University. This is our 4th visit to Western Zhejiang's haunted house. Yang Cheng took the initiative to shake hands with Anan. He knew the importance of teamwork and wanted to build a good relationship with Anan in advance. 3 editors from a horror magazine and 3 students from a medical university. With the 6 of you here, I feel like there's hope for us to clear this time. The 1.9 meters tall man wiped the sweat off his forehead. My name is Fan Dade, a chef at New Oriental International Hotel. This is my younger brother, Fan Kong. He just broke up with his girlfriend and has been cooped up at home. I wanted to bring him out to relax. You came here to relax. The young man in jeans had a pale face. This was his 2nd time going underground that day. If not for the pressure from the futuristic theme park, he would not have come here no matter what. How do I refer to you? Fan Dade was a friendly person. He had a large build and was very reliable. Just call me Xiao Li. I am an equipment maintenance worker. I can be considered the bravest person among us. Xiao Li placed his hands inside his jeans and moved his chin. Thinking about the 3-star scenario, he felt like he was about to speak. My surname is Zhou, and I'm a real estate agent. This is my girlfriend, Duan Yu. Under Duan Yu's resentful gaze, Lao Zhou held her hand and held it in his palm. This small action fed the people around them a lot of dog food. Especially Fan Dade's younger brother, who had just broken up with his girlfriend. He hugged his belly, and his heart was filled with warmth. In the end, everyone's eyes focused on the lanky man at the back of the group. He had one hand in his pocket, and his face was cold. He radiated an aura that warned people away from him. Sensing the other visitors' gaze, the man said casually, "By Cholan. All right, now that we've gotten to know each other, we should hurry. Time is limited, so let's move." Fan Dade thought, this time, I've found someone to rely on. Be it the editor of a thriller magazine or a medical university student, they are all very courageous. Wait a minute, there are some things that I need to clarify with everyone. Yang Chen took out a small notebook from his pocket. He shared the notes that his seniors had given him at the haunted house with the other visitors. Different from the previous visit, the visitors this time were all veterans. They all knew how scary the haunted house was, so no one dared to underestimate it. They all memorized the information silently. This information is too important. It must have taken you a long time to summarize it, right? After Lao Zhou finished reading, he nodded at Yang Cheng to express his gratitude. Of course, these are the valuable experiences that my seniors have obtained through their own experiments. Please do not share this with others, and do not upload it to the haunted house app in case the boss sees it and changes it, Wang Yan said. Wang Dan said. He sounded reluctant, as if he did not want to share the information with the other visitors. Don't worry, I won't share it with others. Lao Zhou held Duan Yu's hand as they walked through the crowd. He thought back to the notes that he had read earlier. This haunted house sure is scary. The notes alone are enough to fill a booklet. The scariest part is yet to come. We're experiencing a new scenario, and we're the first batch of visitors. The seniors' experience won't be of much help to us, so we'll have to rely on ourselves. Yang Cheng placed the notebook back into his pocket. We're ready to go in. Please switch your phone to silent mode. Do not use it during the visit. What will happen if I use it? Xiao Li was reminded of the mission that Mr. Mu had given him. He had come that day to take pictures and videos. Something very scary will happen. I advise you not to rely on luck. If something goes wrong, everyone will be affected. Yang Cheng knew this very well. Is it that serious? Xiao Li grumbled and switched his phone to silent mode as well. The 12 visitors walked down the stairs and stopped at the entrance of the underground morgue. Before them was a rusted iron door, and behind it was a dark corridor. Why is there a room here? Tails looked to the side and saw a door next to the dark corridor. She pushed the door open, and it was decorated like a crime scene. Many things were scattered on the ground, and there was a lot of blood stains. Don't move around. During the visit, the first enemy that we have to face is ourselves. We have to control our curiosity and only do things related to the mission. Yang Cheng felt like the girl was younger than she was, so she went forward to advise her. Okay. When Tails pulled back her gaze, she saw the statue in the bedroom blink. When she was surprised, Yang Cheng and Wang Yan had already pushed open the iron door. There was a wall lamp every few meters in the corridor. The walls were painted white, and there was a strange smell. When Wang Yan and Yang Cheng smelled this, they were shocked because they were too familiar with this smell. This smells like formalin. Wang Yan and Yang Cheng shared a look. As medical students, they were too familiar with this smell, they would not be mistaken. Isn't this a bit too real? He's just visiting a haunted house, and he's using real formalin. Does Mr. Chen not consider the cost? Wang Yan stood at the entrance, and he did not enter. Underground morgue, formalin, white painted corridors. Yang Cheng looked down the corridor and also stopped moving. How come it feels like I'm back at school? Have you two been to your school's underground morgue? Anan walked over. He frowned slightly when he smelled the formalin. I heard when you medical students have lab classes, the lecturer will personally bring you to move the cadavers. You medical students should be more familiar with the underground morgue, right? Who told you medical students need to know about the morgue? Wang Yan recovered and took several steps back. In any case, I haven't been inside the morgue before. Why don't you ask them? Li Shui also shook her head. Li Shui also shook her head. Only Yang Chen's reaction was weirder. He walked into the corridor alone and sniffed the wall. The faint smell of formalin seeped out from the wall, and the smell has seeped into the wall. This is not something that can be done with just some formalin. Now I suspect that Boss Chen has dismantled some medical school's morgue and smuggled it back here. This smell isn't harmful to the body, right? Xiao Li looked down the corridor, and he refused to take the first step. Isn't it fine for us medical students to smell it every day? Furthermore, the smell isn't that strong. Yang Cheng touched the wall and used his fingernails to pick at the white paint. I once heard from a senior that the walls of our school's underground morgue are also painted white. According to legend, the corridors that are painted white are used to transport cadavers, and the ones that aren't painted are for the students and workers. There's such a thing. I thought only our school did that, but after coming to Mr. Chen's haunted house today, I realized that all the underground morgues do this. Yang Cheng called out to Wang Yan and Li Shui. The three of us will walk in front. When we enter, you must follow closely. No matter what we encounter, do not split up. Only by staying together will we have a chance to clear this stage. Quote. I agree with your suggestion, but how should we distribute the photos after we find them? The boss also said that there are only 5 pictures on the wall. Bai Chulin's face darkened like everyone owed him money. I've visited this haunted house before. Everything that the boss says has to be taken in reverse. He said that the picture is useless, so it means that the picture is the key to solving the puzzle. 5 photos, 3 of us. We only need 1. Yang Cheng made a big concession. Everything is for the sake of clearing the stage. Mr. Chen changed the requirements to divide us. Based on my understanding of him, before we enter the central hub, we won't run into anything too scary, but once we get the picture, something really scary will happen. Quote. That's what I think as well. The picture is just to divert our attention. Anan agreed with Yang Cheng. The 3 of us are just here to experience it. Of the 5 pictures, we only need 1. Of the 5 pictures, the 6 of you will take 2, so there will be 3 left. I don't have a partner, so it's not too much for me to take 1, right? Quote. Bai Cholan looked at the others, but before he finished, the chef, Fan Dade, cut in. My little brother just broke up with his girlfriend. I wish to help him get 1. Big brothers, I've challenged 2 1-star scenarios and 1 2-star scenario today, hoping to clear a 3-star scenario in one go. I beg of you, give me 1 picture. Xiao Li was helpless. He had the futuristic theme park behind him, and he was here to look for something useful. The picture sounded creepy, like he would be stuck without it. Even to complete the mission that Mr. Mew had given him, he had to get his hands on 1. The pictures were all distributed, and only Lao Zhou and Duanyu were left. The other visitors turned to look at them. With a forced smile, Lao Zhou grabbed Duanyu's hand. It's fine. We'll just follow you. As long as we don't get separated, there shouldn't be any problems. Lao Zhou did not argue about the picture, and this made the other visitors have a good impression of him. We haven't entered the central hub yet, so it's pointless to talk about that now. We'll discuss it after we enter the central hub. Wang Yan felt like he had contributed the most, but he only got 1 picture. That was quite inappropriate, but he did not say it out loud. He merely sounded impatient. Everyone, follow closely. Yang Cheng walked at the front. The deeper they went, the darker the light became. Without using other lighting tools, they would not be able to see each other's faces clearly from 6 to 7 meters away. Brother, how about we call it a day? Fan Chong stopped at the entrance of the tunnel. If one looked closely, one would notice that the fat on his body was trembling slightly, as if he was trembling in fear. Since we're already here, why don't we go in? Fan Dade looked at his little brother and placed his hand on Fan Kong's shoulder. You're too much of a shut-in. You need to come out to experience something new. Don't lock yourself up in your room. I know you're not feeling good about it, but do you think you don't want to live after a breakup? Life has to go on. Quote. I've been staying at home, but it's not because of a breakup. Fan Kong was helpless toward his brother. He seemed to be hiding something, but it was not convenient for him to share it. In the end, he could only be dragged into the underground morgue by his brother. The chef and his little brother walked at the back, followed by Duanyu and Lao Zhou. Xiao Li and Bai Cholan were solo visitors, and they walked side by side. Then, it was the editor from Thriller magazine and Yang Cheng's group. The group soon came to the first junction. One was not painted, and the other was painted white. On the white painted wall of the passageway, 4 blood-red words were written, living humans are forbidden. As for the unpainted passageway, perhaps because there was no white paint to reflect light, it looked a little dim, giving off a very eerie feeling. The corridor with white paint is used to transport dead bodies. We'll take the unpainted corridor. Yang Chen didn't hesitate and walked over directly. However, as soon as he entered the tunnel, he stopped. Oh Yang, what's wrong with you? Wang Yan bumped into Yang Cheng. He followed Yang Cheng's gaze and stopped as well. The few visitors gathered around them. They could see clearly that there was a ball-shaped object bouncing up and down the corridor that was not painted. That looks like a human head, right? It's too dark. I can't see it clearly. Yang Cheng did not expect to run into something so strange so soon. Don't be afraid, there are more of us. Let's go take a look. Yang Cheng then took a few steps forward. He felt a cold draft behind him. When he turned back to look, he realized the other visitors were standing where they were, including Wang Yan and Li Shui. What are you guys standing there for? Let's go together. Yang Cheng was not that brave. He was just more rational than the rest. Based on the boss's personality, the most dangerous place might be the safest place. Based on your common sense, you deduced that the white corridor is the dead body transport corridor, so you should have chosen another one. But I think the route that you chose is the real dangerous one. We cannot use normal logic to understand the boss's design. Bai Cholan spoke again. His voice was cold, and it made the listeners uncomfortable, but it was undeniable that he had a point. Then, which way do you suggest? Wang Yan's tone was harsh. The three of them had contributed so much, and they were only given one picture. That annoyed him. It doesn't matter which route we take, the important thing is that we cannot split up. The magazine editor, Nan, walked forward. As long as the 12 of us stick together and don't panic, we have a chance of clearing this scenario. He looked at the bouncing ball at the end of the corridor, and his expression turned unnatural. The experience time is 30 minutes. We can enter both corridors, so there is no need to argue over these small things. Nan tried to mediate. Bai Cholan looked at the three medical students and mumbled to himself, this is strange, why would the three of them insist on leading us down that corridor? His voice was so soft that only Fan Dade, Fan Kong, and Xiao Li could hear him. With the three medical students leading the way, the 12 visitors officially entered the corridor. The lights on the wall flickered, and a faded smell of formalin floated in the air. The corridor narrowed, and the ground was covered with more stains. It was hard to tell what they were, but they felt sticky and uncomfortable when they stepped on them. Brother, how about we leave this place? Fan Chong's heart was filled with bitterness that he couldn't speak of. He really didn't know what was wrong with his brother. Why did he insist on bringing him to this place to relax? Don't be afraid, I'm here. Fan Dade himself did not realize that when he spoke, he looked nervous, as if he was a thief who had broken into someone else's house. Wet handprints began to appear on the walls, and the ceiling above their heads seemed to have become much lower. Fan Dade, who was the tallest, could easily reach the ceiling with just a stretch of his hand. The group moved forward for about 10 meters before Nan realized something was wrong. Wait a minute, we've been moving forward for a long time already. How come it feels like the distance between us and the bouncing ball is not closing? After hearing what he said, the others also realized that it seemed to be true. The spherical object that was bouncing up and down in the depths of the tunnel seemed to be constantly moving, maintaining a distance from them. It's not too late to turn back now. Bai Cholan stood in the middle of the group, at a safe position. All of you know that it is not a spherical object but a human head that is bouncing on its own. This has to be a scare point designed by the boss, waiting for us to take the bait. Bai Cholan seemed to have a lot of experience visiting haunted houses. He placed one of his hands in his pocket, and he did not target any particular person. Think about it, when we are attracted by the bouncing human head and move deeper into the corridor, the human head suddenly picks up speed and jumps toward us. Will that catch us off guard? If there are other monsters helping us, the 12 of us will be separated from each other, and the group will be split apart. Quote. Nan nodded and agreed with Bai Cholan. He turned to yell at the visitors behind him, everyone, stay close and don't wander off. It's safest to stick together. It's pointless for you to say that. We all understand that, but when the real fear comes, it is not rationality that controls us but instinct. Our bodies will react before our minds. Bai Cholan's tone was cold, but his words left no room for argument. If I'm not mistaken, if we continue moving forward, there will be a fork in the road, and the corridors will become more complicated. The human heads and ghosts will appear then. The haunted house wants to magnify the fear in everyone's heart, so it will try its best to separate us. When the fork appears, everyone will run in panic, and we might end up in different corridors. The road here is complicated, and once we enter one of them, it will be hard to come out again. Quote. You're talking so much. It's just your own imagination. Wang Yan grumbled internally. He was kind enough to lead the other visitors, to share the experience of his seniors, and to lead the way, so why did someone keep going against him? Indeed, this is just my own assumption, but I hope everyone will be prepared. If there is a fork in the road ahead, please stay close to me. Bai Cholan was obviously fighting for the right to speak with Yang Cheng's group. Wang Yan still wanted to say something, but he was interrupted by Yang Cheng. He's doing this for everyone's sake. There's no need to be so calculative. Yang Cheng had a feeling of unease in his heart. He sniffed the familiar smell of formalin in the air, and his eyes scanned the visitors. He had a feeling that something was not right. When I was here before, something similar happened. As they continued to move forward, iron doors with seals appeared on the walls on both sides of the corridor. They were rusted, and they looked old. Where did Mr. Chen find these things? The human head bounced up and down ahead of them, maintaining a distance from them. After walking for another minute, a junction appeared before them. The corridor on the left was painted white, and there were many bloody words written on the wall. The corridor on the right was not painted, but when the human head turned into it, it was still bouncing on the ground. The corridor that was facing them was also not painted, but there was a room in that corridor that was open. This is a maze. We've only been here for 1 minute, and we've already run into 2 forks. If we continue to move forward, it'll be easy for us to get lost. Fan Dade had no sense of direction. He was the biggest, but he acted the most cowardly. He kept talking to Fan Kong and Lao Zhou, trying to distract himself. I still suggest following the human head. 1. I can promise you that I once heard from the seniors that if we get lost in the underground morgue, we can use the unpainted corridor to get out. This was designed before the morgue was built. 2. Don't make things too complicated. We're just here to visit the haunted house, not to go on an adventure. This human head is more like a guide. Yang Cheng insisted on her opinion. I think we should go take a look at the door that's open. Perhaps we'll find some useful clues there. This time, Anan did not help Yang Cheng. I don't care what choice you make. I just want to remind you not to stay at the junction for too long. It's very dangerous here. Bai Cholan did not look at Yang Cheng and Anan. His eyes were focused behind him like something was slowly approaching him down the dark corridor. He didn't say anything particularly scary, but this small movement made the people around him turn their heads to look at the passage. There really seemed to be something moving down the dark corridor, and there was more than one of them. We've walked so far without even realizing it. Fan Dade laughed dryly and dragged his little brother to the front of the group. Earlier, it had been the 2 of them who had been bringing up the rear. I have to interrupt. Tails, who stood next to Anan, raised her hand. The girl had a beautiful voice, and it was impossible to guess her real age from her voice and appearance. Have you noticed something? The human head has been moving, but I've looked around, and I can't find any mechanism to control it on the wall. Furthermore, look at its movement. It's straight up and down, it doesn't look like it's being pulled by a string. Tails was very observant. There should be some kind of internal mechanism, right? Perhaps the haunted house's boss is laughing at us through the camera. Xiao Li shrugged. He was an employee at the futuristic theme park, so he had some understanding of the entertainment equipment at the theme park. He knew that with current technology, many things that seemed impossible could be done. Look closer. Tails used the cutest expression to say something that made the other visitors the most uncomfortable. The amplitude of the head bouncing up and down is actually different. It doesn't look like there's a program installed inside. It's more like there's an invisible person patting the head up and down, or the head is bouncing on its own. Before the few visitors recovered from the ghost in the corridor behind them, their attention moved back to the head in the corridor on the right. After staring at it for a long time, it really did look like the head was moving on its own. As it moved, it laughed, and the distance between it and the head was getting closer. Fan Dade wiped the sweat off his forehead. He felt like it was not safe to stand in the middle of the group. Let's ignore the head for now and walk straight ahead to see what's behind the open door. Anan turned to Yang Cheng. Based on your speculation, the head is the haunted house's guide. After we finish exploring the room, the head might still be waiting for us outside, so there's no need for us to leave in such a hurry. I also think it's better to enter the room first. Huya rarely spoke, but once she did, it meant that the three editors had decided to enter the room. Yang Cheng wanted to insist, but after hearing Huya's voice, he did not say anything. The beautiful editor's voice was mature and warm. It was a completely different style from Tails, but it was similar to Chen Ge's. This made Yang Cheng feel like she was a cunning big sister who could not be messed with easily. Then, it's decided. The 12 visitors carefully walked across the junction and crowded outside the open door. It was a wooden door. The bottom was hollowed out, and the door was covered in scratch marks. Next to the door, someone had used a pen to write the word, theme park. A theme park inside a haunted house. Yang Cheng walked at the front. He reached out to touch the deep scratches on the door. Some of the scratches were still stained with blood and brown impurities. These scratches wouldn't have been dug out by someone, right? After entering the underground morgue, everything gave him a sense of authenticity. Sometimes, he even forgot that he was visiting a haunted house. Pushing open the door, the room was filled with various trash. There were bottles and jars on the shelves, and there seemed to be various organ models soaked in the yellowish liquid. What kind of theme park is this? The space inside the room was small, and the 12 visitors could not all enter. When Anan entered the room, he told the visitors behind him, "Stay outside and don't wander off. We'll move together when we come out." The 3 medical students and the 3 editors entered the room. To complete the mission given by Mr. Mu, Xiaoli also followed. After they entered, Bai Cholan very naturally stood guard at the door. Fan Dade was more cowardly. He pulled his younger brother and squeezed together with Lao Zhou. The 2 of us shouldn't go in. After they finish their search, we'll just follow them. Then, he smiled shyly at Lao Zhou. We don't come here often. When we move deeper into the morgue, let's walk together. No problem. Lao Zhou looked like a nice person. He was friendly, generous, and easygoing. Inside the dark and eerie corridor, Fan Dade was surrounded by Lao Zhou, Duan Yu, and Bai Cholan. He felt very safe. These people were much more reliable than the youngsters in the room. Our luck is not bad this time. Perhaps we can really clear this scenario. Just as Fan Dade was laughing internally, his younger brother, Fan Kong, had a bad feeling. The fat on his body jiggled slightly. Fan Kong looked back the way they came. The lights in the corridor had gone off. The scariest thing was that the lights moved closer and closer, and every once in a while, one of them would go off. The corridor darkened, and the thing hiding inside seemed to be getting closer. It seems like something is really coming. Yang Cheng and Anan entered the room to look for clues, but they searched for a long time. Other than the dust on their hands, they found nothing. The boss wouldn't waste so much energy to build a useless room. There has to be a big secret hidden inside. Anan led the 2 female editors through the racks. This place looks like an abandoned storeroom. On the other side of the shelf were some tables, chairs, and badly damaged costumes. Anan walked over to pick up one of the costumes. He was shocked to find that the costume was wet, like someone had just come out of the water and walked through the costume with their wet body. Putting down the costume, Anan placed his hand under his nose. He smelled something weird. This doesn't smell like water. When Anan was thinking, Huya walked to the innermost part of the storeroom. She opened the cupboard in the corner and looked through the strange paintings inside. Tails followed at the back. The road was blocked. She leaned against the printer next to her. She seemed to have accidentally hit the switch, and a chubby face appeared in the printer. The light on the printer suddenly lit up, and a piece of paper fell before Tails. The girl was an editor from a horror magazine, so she was quite brave. Her first reaction when she saw the paper was not fear but to pick it up. Did I trigger some kind of trap? Why am I so lucky? Quote. She picked up the paper to look at it. There was a blurry outline on the A4 paper. What is this? Tails studied it for a long time but could not understand it. Anan, come and take a look at this paper. It suddenly fell out of the printer, and there is a very faint pattern on it. Anan, who was studying the costume, accepted the paper. He was confused when he saw the blurry outline. There are no numbers or letters, so it shouldn't be something like a password. Anand took out his phone to look at it. It's a normal white paper with no layers. He dipped some saliva into his hand and rubbed the part that had the faint outline on the paper. There is no change in the color of the paper, and there shouldn't be any chemicals on the surface. He tried many methods, but Anand realized that it was just a normal piece of white paper. I've read so many detective novels, and I've tried everything. Anand returned the paper to Tails. Put it away. Perhaps it will be useful for the later stages. Okay. Tails folded the paper, but before she could put it into her pocket, she saw the printer spit out another piece of paper. It was the same size, and the same blurry outline was printed on it, but compared to before, it was clearer. Is someone controlling the printer? Anand opened the cover of the printer and inspected it. He did not find anything wrong with it. It was just a normal printer. This is weird. These are all normal things that we see in our daily lives. How come they become so strange after being moved into this haunted house? Pulling out the plug, Anand ignored the second piece of paper that came out. He was panicking. We've wasted too much time here. Let's leave first. At the back of the storeroom, Huya was admiring the few paintings inside the cupboard. Her expression was weird, like she was shocked by the strange style of the paintings. Sister Huya, we should go now, Anand urged. Come and take a look at these paintings. They seem to be drawn from the perspective of a dead person. I can even feel the desire of the painter to come out of the paper. It wants to experience life, as if it is about to crawl out of the painting and drag the viewer into it. Huya wanted to take out her phone to take a picture, but considering that they were inside a haunted house, she resisted the urge. If there's a chance in the future, I'll have to talk to the author of these paintings. If I can ask him to draw for us, that would be perfect. If our artists hear you, they'll probably explode again. Anand smiled helplessly. Huya and Anand walked outside, ready to leave. She was about to leave, but at that moment, a soft sound came from the printer, and then the computer next to the printer started on its own. It was very quiet, and any sound would be amplified. Tails watched the computer screen light up on its own, and no one touched it during the whole process. Is it the boss behind this? Tails stopped where she was, and her mind started to wander. The boss wouldn't waste space to decorate a useless scenario. Could the secret of this warehouse be hidden inside the computer? When she first entered, Tails was curious. Why would such an old warehouse have the word, theme park, written on it? There had to be something more to it. She widened her beautiful eyes and moved closer to the computer. The screen gave off a dim light, and the background was still black. There was a human face printed on it. Initially, Tails thought it was the reflection of the screen, but the more she looked at it, the more she felt that was not right. Isn't this a man's face? There were many things inside the warehouse, and it was very messy. The three editors from the magazine were squeezed in the middle, and Yang Cheng's group was further away. There were some old racks between them. Li Shui, look at these organ models in the glass jars. They are almost identical to the specimens at our school. The scale is the same as the real thing. As a medical student, she could not find any fault with the organ models before her. This caused a strange fear to rise in Li Shui. After all, they were not at a medical school but a haunted house. Those who are not used to dealing with organs won't be able to make such realistic models. Internal organ models were different from mannequins. They could only be seen when the body of a living creature was opened. Other than that, human organs were completely different from animal organs. Yang Chen could confirm that the haunted house's boss was very familiar with the human body. When I visited this place last time, I felt like the boss has a deep understanding of the human body. Normally, if a person has a deep understanding of internal organs, they are either a doctor or a butcher. You've been watching too many movies, haven't you? Wang Yan was scared by Yang Cheng's words. The boss pays attention to detail. He probably hired someone to make these organ models. I have a feeling things are not that simple. Yang Cheng pulled back her gaze and walked out. Every time I come to this haunted house, I have a different experience. The different scenarios are different, but they are also real, like these buildings and their corresponding ghost stories exist in real life. The three medical students prepared to leave the warehouse. Xiaoli grabbed his phone, but before he could find the chance to snap a picture, he saw Bai Cholan blocking the door. He had one hand in his pocket and glanced at Fan Kong like nothing had happened. The fat on his stomach jiggled. Fan Kong had no idea that he had been targeted. His full attention was on the corridor. The lights on the wall went out one after another, and the frequency seemed to be increasing. It gave off the feeling that something in the corridor was accelerating and rushing toward them. His fingers tightened involuntarily, and Fan Kong's eyes slowly widened. The darkness invaded, and shadows swayed. Some appeared to be crawling on the ceiling. His heart started to race. Fan Kong grabbed Fan Dade's arm. Brother, be careful. Something is coming. Quote. What is it? Fan Dade was a slow person. After being reminded by Fan Kong, he started to look around. It's over there. Quick, call them out. Fan Kong remembered Anan's words. No matter what happened, they had to stay together. Don't panic, I'll go take a look. Fan Dade walked toward the crossroad. He was very timid, and he just wanted to put on an act in front of his little brother. After taking 2 or 3 steps, he stopped and craned his neck, trying his best to look at the crossroad. The lights went off faster, and the light dimmed. Fan Dade started to get nervous. When he moved forward, Lao Zhou and Duan Yu took several steps back. Together with Bai Cholan, they surrounded Fan Kong. The atmosphere in the corridor was different from before. The few people standing at the warehouse door all turned to look at the junction. The sound of the head falling to the ground became clearer. The lights went out one by one. Fan Dade, who stood at the front, could clearly see a figure standing in the darkness. A crooked body, a head on its shoulder, and 2 arms of different lengths that seemed to have been haphazardly pieced together. It was hidden in the darkness, standing on its tiptoes and bouncing lightly in the darkness. The woman's whisper drilled into his ears. It was sad and sad. No one could hear what she was saying. It sounded like a plea, but it also sounded like a complaint, like she wanted to borrow something. Anxiety, and oppression slowly seeped into his soul. Fear slowly crawled out from the corner. Fan Dade's legs started to weaken. He felt a chill on his neck like a pair of cold hands had reached out from his own clothes and gently touched his neck. Sweat slid down his forehead, and his calves trembled. The lights in the other 3 corridors at the junction had all gone out. At a glance, there was only darkness. The sound of the heart beating in his chest and the sound of the head beating slowly overlapped, and it got closer and closer. The lights continued to go out. There was no time to react. The light a few meters before Fan Dade suddenly went out on its own. The blurry, crooked body was approaching. They were already here. His calves trembled more violently. Just as Fan Dade wanted to turn around, the light beside him went out without warning. Half of his body was shrouded in darkness. His tall body was like a wall, standing between the darkness and the light. His neck grew colder, and the feeling of being touched climbed up his calves. It felt like there were countless ants crawling into his clothes. His strength was slowly sapped away, and he could not make a sound. His Adam's apple trembled, and his pupils almost narrowed. In the darkness before him, an extreme mass of darkness slowly stretched out. It was like a viscous liquid, and it stood before Fan Dade. After being soaked in formalin for a long time, their skin was like dried cowhide. It stuck to Fan Dade's body. The darkness continued to deepen, and the face finally appeared. The face was hollowed out. The moment it appeared, it completely shattered all of Fan Dade's psychological defenses. At that moment, he felt his heart stop beating, and the blood in his veins started to flow in reverse. It was indescribable, and fainting and screaming became an extravagant hope. Who can save me? Save me. It was unknown who made the sound or where it came from, but Fan Dade's whole body started to tremble. With his height of 1.9 meters, he completely blocked out the darkness in front of him. The people behind him could only see that Fan Dade's entire body began to convulse as if he was sick, and the color of his skin became extremely abnormal. Brother. What's wrong? Quote. Fan Dade, his brother suddenly became. Fan. Dot. His blood started to flow faster, and Fan Dade slowly turned his head around. His face was covered with green veins, and his expression was twisted to the extreme. His trembling lips slowly opened. In the darkness, Fandade used all the energy in his body to shout, "They're coming. Run!" Quote. His back was cold, and his ears were dripping with liquid. His ears were completely occupied by the sound of nails scratching against glass. He felt the monster whose face had been hollowed out crawl over his body, and the hands dripping with formalin gently covered his ears. His five senses were weakened, and his mind was blank. He could see his brother's mouth open, but he could not hear his brother's voice. Fandade screamed like a madman. He was like a spooked bull. He turned around to grab his brother, who was also panicking, and ran toward the end of the corridor where the only light on the wall had not been extinguished. "Run! They're coming! They're behind us!" Quote. His scalp was about to explode, and every nerve in his body was shaking. Fandade did not turn his head around, and he did not care about the other visitors. His mind was filled with that indescribable face. "Brother!" With his arms grabbed, Fan Kong could not struggle. He was dragged by Fandade as he ran. "Where are you guys going? Come back!" Lao Zhou screamed at the top of his lungs. His voice was heard by all the people inside the warehouse. Bai Cholan was the first to run out. Behind him were Xiao Li and a few medical students. "Come back!" Lao Zhou screamed again. His expression was anxious. He gritted his teeth and chased after them. "Follow them!" Bai Cholan, Xiao Li, and Yang Cheng chased after them. Everything happened too suddenly. No one expected that some of the visitors would suddenly go crazy. Fandade and Fan Kong rushed to the end of the corridor. Without looking back, they jumped into one of the corridors. Lao Zhou was the closest to them, but when Lao Zhou entered the corridor, his body stopped for a moment. Before him were three corridors, and strangely enough, there were footsteps coming from all three corridors. It should be this way. Lao Zhou held Duan Yu's hand as they chased down one of the corridors. However, he only took a few steps when he was pulled back by Bai Cholan. "Don't go. This is not the time to panic." Quote. "Let go of me." Lao Zhou shoved Bai Cholan to the side. He could not watch his friend disappear just like that. Lao Zhou had used all his strength in that moment of desperation. Bai Cholan took 2 steps back and slammed heavily into the wall. This was seen by Xiao Li and the trio from the medical school. "Brother! Don't be rash. You can't give chase now," Yang Cheng quickly said. His mind was sharp, and he immediately realized that something had happened. "Calm down. You have to calm down." Quote. He was worried that Lao Zhou would rush forward again, so he and Xiao Li wanted to stop Lao Zhou, but at that moment, the only light in the corridor went out. The whole corridor was plunged into darkness. "Stay where you are. Do not move," Yang Cheng shouted. In the darkness, no one could see what was happening. The footsteps of Fandade and his brother slowly disappeared, and soon the sound of rolling wheels came from the corridor again. Something was following behind Fandade and his brother. 30 seconds later, the wall light came back on. Under the dim light, the group stood up from the ground, still shaken. They looked at each other, and they saw the fear on each other's faces. The light went out, the 2 visitors disappeared, and what was that sound of wheels? What is chasing behind the Fandade brothers? What did they see just now? Yang Cheng's mind was filled with questions. The more he thought about it, the more unsettled he became. What had happened earlier was like a bucket of ice water being poured over his head, and it chilled his bones. All his preparation seemed to be useless. The feeling of helplessness was more painful than despair itself. Yang Cheng gripped his fists tightly and sucked in a cold breath. "We don't even have a chance to struggle. Stay where you are. Don't move." Quote. When all the lights went off and darkness fell, Yang Cheng shouted to remind the group. The 3 editors were still inside the warehouse. Anan and Huya were in the middle of the racks. They walked in front and did not realize that Tail had not followed them. The room was dark, and only the light from the computer screen was visible. Tail tilted her body, and her face slowly moved closer to the screen. As she got closer, the face on the computer screen became clearer. The dark green outline protruded outward like a body that was submerged in water slowly rising to the surface. She focused on the face on the screen. There was no hair, and it appeared to be swollen and white from being soaked in some kind of liquid for a long time. This outline. Taking out the piece of white paper from her pocket, Tail leaned against the monitor, and she unfolded it. Her slender fingers landed on the paper, and Tail's eyes slowly widened. She realized that the outline on the printed paper was identical to the face on the computer screen. Is this a human face? She turned to look, and the lights outside had all gone off. In the darkness, she saw the light on the printer light come on again. A piece of white paper fell before her eyes. This time, there was no human face on the paper, but 3 words were written: turn back. Holding the white paper on the ground with both hands, Tails was surrounded by an unknown fear. Her body was cold, and she could not find her teammates. Standing alone in the dark, her neck was stiff, and she forced herself not to turn her head. The cold light from the computer screen shone on her body, and Tail's small body started to shake. Her pupils trembled in their sockets, and the corner of her eyes moved uncontrollably to the side. The black computer screen rippled like water, and the thing at the bottom of the water was swimming up. Tail did not dare move. She maintained her posture and stared at the screen with the corner of her eyes. The ripples spread, and in the computer screen that no one else noticed, a green and completely swollen face crawled out. It was too fast, and there was no time to react. Tail could only watch as the face rushed at her. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out from her throat. Her eyes widened like they were about to tear out of their sockets. The swollen face was still approaching. Its neck, arms, and upper body. The wet arms reached for the helpless girl before it. The monster seemed to want to drag Tail into the computer screen. What just happened? The lights in the corridor lit up again. Nan yelled at the people outside, and he and Huya hurried out. The faces of all the visitors outside the warehouse were pale. Lao Zhou was still breathing heavily, and he looked like he had been given quite a scare. Say something. What the hell happened? A bad feeling rose in Anan's heart. He looked at the number of people, and his brows creased. The chef and his brother are missing. They ran away on their own. Bai Cholan rubbed his shoulder. He had been pushed aside by Lao Zhou and hit the wall. Both of you should have been outside at the time. Why would they suddenly go crazy? Anan stared at Bai Cholan. Just now, the lights on the wall went off one by one. The chef's little brother seemed to have seen something coming from the dark. The chef ran to the junction to check it out. Then, like a madman, he grabbed his little brother and ran away. Bai Cholan told Chen Ge everything that he had seen. He did not hide anything. The thing in the dark. Anan's frown deepened. In other words, it was the monster in the dark that scared the chef to the point of breaking down, and only the chef who has seen the monster can tell what it looks like. When Anan said that, everyone's heart squeezed. The unknown was the scariest. How terrifying must that thing be to be able to make a 1.9 meter tall, burly man collapse in fright? The scariest thing was that it was hiding in the dark, and it could find the next person at any moment. Did you trigger any traps outside? Anan crossed his arms over his chest and held his chin with his other hand. No, we were the ones who were ambushed. There was no warning. Bai Cholan said decisively. I've already told you that the junction is the most dangerous place. Do not stay near it, but you refused to listen. He sighed. We are under the surveillance of the haunted house's boss at all times. He is looking for our every weakness. Once he finds an opening, like a piranha in the water, he will rush forward to tear us apart. The truth was right before their eyes, and the other visitors could not argue with it. The 3 editors and the 3 medical students had their own teammates, and they were a small group. Even if they agreed with Bai Cholan, they would not show it. However, Xiaoli was different. Like Bai Cholan, he was also a solo visitor. He had entered the haunted house alone to challenge a 3-star scenario. At that moment, he felt that Bai Cholan was not a normal person. Be it his logical thinking or analysis, he was above the standard of a normal person. Therefore, the idea of forming a team with Bai Cholan appeared in his mind. At least they would be able to take care of each other. I think we should listen to everyone's opinion before we make a move. Xiaoli did not openly support Bai Cholan, but he was standing next to Bai Cholan and facing Anan and Yang Cheng. That was very telling. It was my idea to enter the storeroom to explore. This is my fault. Anan apologized to the other visitors directly. He also became more serious. In the future, before I make a decision, I will communicate more with everyone. It's fine. Bai Cholan pointed at the spot where Fan Date and Fan Kong had disappeared. What do we plan to do next? Should we go find them? Lao Zhou was kind. We're still afraid when there are 12 of us, but if it's just the 2 of them exploring alone, they might be scared to death. That's fine. Bai Chuling and Anan had no objections. They turned to Yang Cheng, who stood in the middle of the corridor with her hands clenched. Do you 3 medical students have anything to say? I don't object to going to find the chef and his brother, but before that, you have to think about something. Yang Cheng's eyes scanned the group. We are currently in control of the situation. The choice of every path is up to us. Once we go to find the 2 of them, we will lose the initiative and become the boss's toys, falling into his carefully designed traps. What do you mean by that? Lao Zhou was displeased. I've made myself very clear. If we want to clear the game, or rather, we need to go as far as we can. Yang Cheng let go and looked down the corridor that the chef had taken. I suggest we find the path ourselves.